Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I want to give you my first impressions of playing Battlefield 5 for the very first time. Now, a disclaimer, I was not part of the Game Changers program this time around, so my playtime was very limited, about 10 to 15 minutes at max, and I also was not able to record my own gameplay, although I should be getting some gameplay from some friends who were able to capture. Now, after playing, I wrote down some notes about my initial feelings and impressions, and also took a few more notes of some of the other Game Changer videos out there, just taking note of some of the other little things on screen that we can notice. One thing that's always irked me about Battlefield 1, which I noticed felt different in Battlefield 5, was the grenade timers. They feel longer this time around. That's probably a twofold mechanic in that it'll allow players to throw grenades back, but also it just allows you to now escape grenade blast radiuses, which was previously very difficult to do in Battlefield 1. Also, according to Westy, there is, or at least will be, a way to underhand throw grenades depending on your stance, and you may also be able to deflect grenades. Again, I haven't seen any gameplay on this, but sounds kind of cool. The gunplay changes are probably some of the biggest underlying mechanic changes that we're seeing right now. They're different from Battlefield 1. Frankly, they're different from Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. We no longer have random bullet deviation, but to make up for it, weapons have considerable amounts of recoil now. You're not going to pick up an assault rifle and kill people at medium and even long range with short bursts like you could in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. Things are going to kick much more significantly. I think it's already a definite step up from Battlefield 1. I'm going to need more time with the weapons, but I am actually looking forward to trying to master the recoil and understand the burst patterns of each weapon. It should be intuitive within game. The more you play, the more you should understand the recoil patterns, and I'm really curious to see how effective we can make some of these weapons at medium ranges. To an extent, the weapons did feel very limited range-wise simply because of the intense recoil kick. I don't know how much of that will actually be controllable from a standing position, and it did feel like they're going to use this as a way to really significantly change the ranged effectiveness of different weapons. But again, I played it for a very limited period of time, and I need more time to test out the different weapons. Now, fortunately, suppression is not going to affect your recoil pattern any further. The recoil is already pretty intense as it is, so suppression has become a visual hindrance only. However, suppression now has the added bonus for the person suppressing the enemy in that if you fully suppress your target, it will now 3D spot them for you and your team, which is kind of cool. So they nerfed suppression on one area and buffed it in another area, and I like this change a lot. It certainly makes the mechanic more interesting. Sniper rifles no longer have the sweet spot mechanic. They do still have scope glint though. Also, DICE has changed the headshot multiplier, according to Westy, to 1.9 now from 1.7 in Battlefield 1. This should further incentivize headshots or aiming for the head, and hopefully if you can manage to control some of the crazy recoil in this game, you can actually put that to your advantage. It is, however, still lower than Battlefield 4's headshot multipliers. Spotting is now entirely different. The Q button does not 3D spot your enemies for you. Instead, it'll put a stationary marker on the map that's red, and it shows up for your squad mates. So if you want to say, hey, somebody's hiding in that building over there, you can basically just ping it or mark it by doing so. However, if you look directly, and I mean directly, at your enemies and you hit the Q button, it will actually put a red marker that your squad mates can see, but it'll also put an icon over it showing what kind of enemy you might have spotted there. The marker still will not track the enemy, so if you spot an enemy and they run off, then your teammates will just have to try and figure out where he is. The recon class can spot the enemy using their binoculars, and so that's an ability of the recon class, and also, as I mentioned before, the support class spotting using suppression, and I believe those two are 3D spots that will track the enemy. So that seems to be the only way I know of so far that you can 3D spot the enemy. This is a huge change up from the way it is in previous Battlefield games, and I like it. I think it's awesome. People are really going to have to watch for movement, scan the horizon line, and hey, a well-camouflaged player will really benefit from it since spotting will no longer be a major element. In theory, running behind cover will break 3D spots. However, I did see a few YouTube clips that showed people in smoke or heavy fog in which you couldn't actually see the player, but the 3D spots were showing through. So again, I'm not sure if this is still a work in progress mechanic. The Scaz flare gun still shows people on the minimap and is still extremely useful. The visual quality of Battlefield 5 is impressive. It's not a huge leap beyond Battlefield 1, but I think the World War II theaters of war are going to provide plenty of environments for DICE to really have fun with. Battlefield 1 is still one of the best looking multiplayer shooters on the market right now, so if Battlefield 5 even pushes that a little bit, I think it's still a very impressive game visually. Obviously, the destruction fidelity is impressive to look at and stuff like that. There was, I think, still a bit of visual clutter. There's definitely a lot of atmospherics and particle effects, I think a little bit too much with the snow coming down, but also the amount of dust and dirt kicked up when your bullets hit the ground can often make it really hard to track your enemies, especially without 3D spots being a major asset or a major element to tracking your enemies now. Things are getting trickier, and it may look more realistic, but if you think about real combat, if you're shooting at an enemy and you know you have a guaranteed shot on them, you're only going to hit them once or twice. It doesn't matter if your visual tracking of them is obstructed by the dirt and debris kicked up by it. But in Battlefield, when you have to land 3, 4, maybe even 5 shots, and you're obstructing your own target by kicking up dirt and debris around them or having muzzle flash or other things like that obstruct your ability to track them, it might get annoying. We'll have to see how this plays out in the long run, but there were some pretty significant issues with muzzle flash really obstructing your ability to track your enemies in Battlefield 1, so I hope DICE is very careful with this. There's some pretty intense light and dark contrasts in the game. This is done primarily for visual or cinematic effect, but what it does is it makes it really hard to see enemies who are in dark buildings. They try and basically replicate the effect that your eye might have in adjusting to light and dark environments. Your eye does this naturally when playing video games, but the fact that they're adding in an extra effect on top of that gets really annoying because you're trying to focus your eye on a dark environment to see where the guy is hiding in a window of a dark building, and your eye can't adjust because the game is literally faking the adjustment and not adjusting it for you. This drives me crazy. It's been kind of an asset in previous Battlefield games, and I hope they can tone it down in Battlefield 5 because I was having a firefight with a dude that I basically couldn't see at all, and I was just shooting at the muzzle flash of his weapon. One of the highlights of my session was getting into the Churchill Flamethrower variant of that tank and being able to shoot the flamethrower out at enemies. What's really cool about the new flamethrower effect is that you're actually seeing the jellied gasoline go flying through the air, and whatever it lands on catches on fire. So you are shooting streams of fire out, but rather than it just appearing to be gaseous fire, it's like liquid gasoline that's on fire as it's flying through the air. It looks far more realistic, and the effects of it are cooler. You can shoot the flame a lot further and be a bit more precise with it. I like it a lot. When you kill enemies in the game, they will actually drop a small amount of ammo. I don't know if it's even a full magazine. It's just a little bit to sort of help you top off, hopefully give you the bullets that you used in killing that enemy. You will automatically pick up their ammo when you run over it. I don't think this animation of picking it up obstructs your ability to shoot back, but I'd have to test it a little bit further. In-game melee mechanics feel like you need to be a bit closer to your enemy, so hopefully this will reduce some of the ease of use of them. I'm not sure if you need to be super precise with melee mechanics or if they're kind of auto aim like they were in Battlefield 1. It looks like spawn beacons may be coming back. Squad leaders in the game will be carrying a radio beacon on their back, which is kind of cool in that if you're fighting a squad leader, you'll be able to tell and that they have a giant radio backpack. But also, I think you can actually remove this radio from the squad leader and place it on the ground. I believe this will make it so that the squad leader is no longer a spawn point, but the radio itself is now the new spawn point. Again, not 100% sure on this, but I think that's what I saw in game. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is the Fortification System, the new system that allows players to build up things like sandbags to protect them, or build up defensive machine guns or artillery cannons and stuff like that. If you're the support class, you can build those ones. This is something that I think I was most concerned about once I started to see some trailer stuff and a little bit of gameplay. And now that I've actually played Battlefield 5, I'm even a bit more concerned about the system for several reasons. The first is that all the fortifications are in predetermined locations, so you can't get creative with it. You can't say, oh, what if I put sandbags over here and create a cool little machine gun nest? You'll only be able to do that if DICE has already decided that that's where a machine gun nest will be. You'll see the little fortification symbols pop up when you switch to your build tool. This makes it far less interesting, far more predictable in terms of building up cover and defense. The other problem is that the cover itself, I'm not sure how useful it actually is. And in fact, on multiple occasions, we were easily able to overthrow the enemy because they just couldn't see us over their giant sandbag walls, and then use their own fortifications against them. Sure, this is a realistic mechanic of war where you could capture an enemy base and then use it against the enemy, but in Battlefield, they award you points for building these fortifications, which I think is a huge mistake. You could have a player on the far end of the map building up sandbags and guns that may never get used during the entire game, or maybe the enemy will just roll in there completely uncontested and use the fortifications against the enemy. However, the player building those fortifications is being rewarded heavily for the building process, which makes no sense to me. It's like throwing a smoke grenade in game. The reward of throwing the smoke grenade is that it allows you to push up, take cover, maybe get some kills, maybe capture a flag, revive your teammate. You don't get points for throwing the smoke grenade. The point of throwing the smoke grenade is it allows you to accomplish something that may give you points or may allow you to help push the game in a certain direction. The same principle should be applied with fortifications. Why are we being awarded for putting some sandbags on the ground or building a machine gun, especially if that can be used directly against us and maybe even help the enemy team more than it helps our team? Rather, the reward should be the effects of it. If I build a sandbag that allows me to absorb more shots from my enemy and kill the enemy, then that's the reward. If I build a machine gun that allows me to mow down 2 or 3 enemy, then that's the reward. I killed those enemy, not the building process. So I hope DICE revisits this mechanic a bit more. I don't think they're going to take out the fortification mechanic, but I would hope that they remove the point system from the fortification mechanic entirely. I think that would overall balance it out better and probably prevent players from trying to exploit it for some easy points that makes no difference in terms of how well your team could ultimately do. Anyway, after my, again, very brief time playing the game, so take everything that I'm saying right now with a grain of salt because it's just such a limited play experience. I can't really do super deep dives into the mechanics, just what I've experienced and what I've seen through other gameplay videos. I'm very excited for Battlefield 5. I think they're really pushing a lot of things with the game in the right direction. I think it will need a bunch of finessing and fine-tuning and tweaking, as any Battlefield game does. But I'm really excited about this. This feels like DICE is making a lot of changes for the better. They're pushing a lot of the base mechanics in the right direction, a direction I've wanted to see it go for a long time. And I'm just going to need to really test a lot of it way more extensively. So, as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll be covering more Battlefield 5 and more E3 stuff in the future. I'll see you guys next time. This is Level Cap, signing out.